Okay, good morning everyone. It is Thursday, July 22nd, 2021, and we're going to begin our pre-market analysis on the S&P 500 futures market. So let's jump to our ultra-high time frames and take a look at the picture now that we've had a pretty strong push going through yesterday and into the overnight session. Our quarterly looks very strong, no signs of exhaustion. Probably not a surprise there. Same deal on the monthly, and you can see now this candle is at least starting to look a little nicer than it did, I believe, back on Monday when we had kind of somewhat of a bearish looking situation. But the monthly, from a divergence perspective, also, as usual, looking very strong, no signs of exhaustion. When we get to the weekly, there really were no signs of exhaustion before we had that sell-off. Remember, we did see it on the daily going down to shorter time frames, but on our weekly, we didn't necessarily have a strong reversal signal from a divergence perspective. And so it looks like we're starting to recover. So this line that is on the chart right now, indicating this potential divergence signal, we drew this, I believe, 2 days ago, and just had to update it off of the low at 42.24 yesterday. And so right now we do have what looks to be a bullish divergence on the weekly, which is a good thing. And if we can finish this week out over the course of today and tomorrow, and this bar stays up here, we'll have a very nice reversal signal indicating a continued push higher here from a weekly perspective. When we get to our daily, there is that bearish indication that gave us our bearish case for the morning, or helped build the case for a bearish morning on the 14th there, or maybe it was going into the 15th now that I think about it. So outside of that bearish indication, the daily really has not given us any other clues, at least from the divergence perspective. Now you can see a really strong sell-off here. I think we said about 160 points or something like that. Got a strong move out of that 24 level, and the last 2 days have looked very strong here. And right now on the current bar, we don't have any signs of exhaustion on the current push. So that's what our ultra high time frames are saying. Let's look at our other high time frames here. We've got some bearish indications off of the candle that closed at 3 a.m. on the 4 hour here. So on this continued push up, we have seen these bearish indications. In fact, if you look back to, let's just call this, midnight on July 20th, you see right here we get our first bearish indication. And from there, we get this sell-off from, say, 73 to 56, so almost 20 points. And then it pushes a little higher, and we get another bearish indication off that high, which leads to, again, let's say 42.80 to 42.50, about 30 points. It continues going, and then we get a bearish indication here going into the end of, looks like, what is that, Monday or Tuesday? I'm getting all the dates mixed up here. But the end of the day there, and we pulled back some 43.30 down to 43.10 for 20 points. And now up here, we're getting the same situation again, where we're getting a bearish indication off of the highs that we were making in the overnight session. Most recently off of this bar that closed at 3 a.m. And now you can see that we're getting the beginnings of a potential shallow pullback, just like we got here, just like we got here. So this could be the one that ends up turning into a larger correction lower. We don't have a good indication on our daily of that, at least from this divergent perspective. On the 4 hour though, we do have a good case for divergence going on right now. And so we have pulled back, let's call this from 43.60 to about 43.45 for about 15 points so far. So this is our first bearish indication. As we attempt to push up and test that all-time high, we ended up getting just about 20-25 points from the all-time high there. 60-minute is giving the same agreement. a little bit of bearishness off of our overnight high. And as we pull back here, we don't necessarily have any indication of a bounce right now. The 60-minute does not show any bullish indications. We are coming right up into this resistance area. So see how price, it's hard to see from a 60-minute perspective. It might be much easier on a short time frame because you could see all the details here. But notice how price pushed all the way up to the high of 43.45 here, and then pulled back from 43.45, and then eventually broke through and pushed through. It's coming right up to 43.45 right now. In fact, the low is 43.46. So we're just 1 point in front of that first potential support area. But there's no strong bullish indication on the 60-minute here. And if we go back to the 4-hour, really no indication, although I think you could probably argue here that price has moved down, but the indicator itself really has not broken the low of when price was up here. So the low on RVI, if I could get that, is 68.5, and over here, at least right now, is 68.9. So it's higher, but the price is lower. So maybe there's an argument there from a 4-hour, but the 4-hour or the 1-hour does not necessarily have that same indication. So we might have a little bit lower to go before it actually turns, but our intermediate time frame should help us out with that picture there. So let's jump down to our 30-minute and take a look at what is going on. So we do have the agreement from the overnight high up here, at least in the general area, off of that candle there that printed at 3 a.m. and the candle that then printed up here at 4 a.m. or at least 4 a.m. Pacific time, we had another bearish indication. And so we do have agreement from the 4-hour, the hourly, and the 30-minute of that bearish indication, just like we have on all these other pushes that we talked about when we looked at that 4-hour case. As we pushed, we got bearish signals, shallow pullbacks, and then continuations higher. And so we're seeing that right now, which again is why I have much more of a bullish kind of sentiment or bias for the morning, regardless of what we're seeing off the highs right now. But we do have the bearish indication led to the pullback. Again, we're pulling into that 65 or 45 area back here. And we do have a prediction point sitting there just 2 ticks below the high. So remember, the 60-minute did not necessarily have much of a bullish case. Now, if we wanted to, we could extrapolate all the way back to when price was down here. And there most definitely is a push up in price and a push down on the indicator. So you could make that argument for some type of divergence right now. Not the type that I really love to rely on, but it definitely is there right now. So we have to keep in mind that the 30-minute and the 4-hour do show potential indications of some bullishness, but that 60-minute intermediate time frame between the two is not agreeing. So typically when we don't have agreement, that means we could potentially see a little bit lower, and then once all the time frames start to come into coherence, I guess you could say, that's when you get your final bounce. So let's see here on the 30-minute, you did have the argument there, very clear agreement with the overnight high as far as that bearish signal. And when we get to our 10-minute here, go ahead and zoom in a little bit. We did get that bearish indication at 3 a.m. And then when it popped up a little bit further here, just an hour later, you don't necessarily have the clearest bear divergence, or you don't have any bear divergence on this 10-minute chart. But in this area, right where we got all the other bearish signals from the 4-hour all the way down, we do have an agreement here on the 10-minute at that 3 a.m. time frame. And so now things have pulled back here, and really kind of the same thing with our 10-minute. I don't necessarily see any strong indication of a reversal here from a divergence perspective. Yes, we can go all the way back to like we did on the 30-minute to these lows over here, and you can see price has been trending higher, but the RVI actually came lower. So yes, from all the way back there, you can argue divergence. Although, like I always say every morning, I'd really like to see something over in this area. I don't know, maybe it comes down like it is now, pops up a little bit, maybe peaks a little bit lower, maybe to that prediction point, and then price starts to push higher. And on here, maybe the price comes up, or the indicator comes up, but then it comes down and makes a higher low. Now we have a lower low in price, a higher low on the indicator. Now we have the type of divergence I'd prefer to see in that area to give me more confidence in that type of signal. So we'll just have to see what happens here. Right now, that 10-minute does not show any indications of a reversal, at least the kind that I would prefer to see here. Now we do want to keep in mind that we have kind of this smaller leg here. So yes, you have the entire push from 24 all the way to the overnight high here. That in itself is a leg. So if we wanted to go ahead and take a look at the larger push, we could come all the way back to 43.10. We could come all the way back. I love the fact that our 38 is coming right into the previous daily low. I love the fact that the 61.8 brings us right back to these previous resistance area here, right at our important level at 76.75. So some really nice confluence there. And even this 38% retracement being there, we have a prediction point just a few ticks above it, and just a few ticks below it, we have our important level at 06.25, which was that really strong resistance in the market back on July, at least the night before July 19th. So, or the night going into July 19th. So I do like that. So if things pull back and they do break through the current area that we're in, and we can get through this 36.75 where you see this very obvious resistance area in the market that could turn into support. If they can get through that stuff, we do have other levels below us that would make sense to hold for support for the bulls to jump in and continue this higher. So that's the larger picture. If we look at this smaller leg here, we have this leg right from the previous daily low up to where we are right now. And so with that picture, I'm just looking to see if we have any agreement, and 50% of this whole push brings us right back into the prediction point and these two very close important levels we have marked with that previous resistance in the market. So there's some good confluence down in that area. And then if we do pull back a little further, I like the fact that our prediction point and the important level here, both within 5 or 6 ticks of each other, is also lining up with this previous resistance in the market back here. So we have some good levels below us if it does continue to sell off, to look for strong buy signals. And if I could just wrap everything up here really quickly, I'm just going to kind of go through it on my side here. My ultra high time frames have absolutely no signs of exhaustion. In fact, my weekly is showing somewhat of a bullish divergence right now. Daily shows no signs of exhaustion as it pushes. And then when we get to our 4-hour, our 60-minute, our 30-minute, and our 10-minute, we do get some bearish indications off the highs. But if anyone remembers, this is almost kind of like Groundhog's Day. For the last few days, every time we got these 4-hour down to 10-minute bearish indications, they were only for shallow pullbacks. So that's where we're at right now. We do have much more of a bullish case, keeping in mind that we need to get through the overnight high in order to negate the 4-hour, hourly, 30-minute, and 10-minute bearish signal off of that price level. So I think that's where I'll leave it. Today we do have our study session.